What they've done is they've taken all of those negative traits, all those negative variables in the toxic capitalism of division and competition and inflation, and hard coded that into the protocols.
This is the deep dive with Adam Roa. All right. What's up, deep divers? Welcome to another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. I have a special guest today, Oto Gomes, which he is outside of who normally comes on this podcast. I would say normally on this podcast, it's like spiritual, personal development sort of thing. And we are here today to ask the question, why should anyone care about cryptocurrency? And
good question.
Yes. And as someone who just launched a cryptocurrency course and is masterful in this space, I'm very excited to have you on and expose the deep dive audience to this conversation, because even for myself, as someone who holds cryptocurrency, to be honest with you, bro, I don't know how much I have. I put it on a hard wallet years ago and I just set it aside.
That's actually the best way to do it, honestly.
and so I could be a multi-millionaire, or I could have like $10 because I bought a bunch of weird coins. Even for myself, I feel like cryptocurrency is just this amorphous thing that's kind of scary. And someone once told me, don't invest in anything you don't understand. And so I'm going to play the role of the absolute idiot in this conversation, and also maybe even a bit of a pushback. Let's see what can happen here about why should anyone care about cryptocurrency. So Oto Gomes, thank you so much for being on the Deep Dive Podcast today. I want to welcome you and invite you to please just give people, the 90-second cliff notes of why they should listen to what you have to say about cryptocurrency.
Thank you, Adam, brother. Thank you so much for having me. I love doing this and talking about it. So I appreciate you bringing me on. I know I'm an obtuse guest compared to your regular guest, but I promise you, in the course, I actually go into mindset and self-awareness and all that stuff. So I actually have a twist to it.
Yeah. Trojan horse.
Yeah. So I've been in the industry since 2012. At that time I was going through a divorce, or I was going through issues in my marriage. And, right before crypto took off is when I hit rock bottom, and I really had to build myself back up from that time to now, from 2015 until now. And honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I'm so grateful for it. And it gave me the opportunity to really dive into the crypto space, look at it from different eyes, from a different perspective, just because I had to let go of everything I knew after that divorce. And I also lost my house in a fire. That's a whole nother story, and my car and everything. So that was around the same 2-3 month period.
Whoa. And
so I had to really grow from that and feel the darkness to then appreciate the light. And this is where I'm at now. I've almost a decade into it, I was able to navigate it well enough to make the money and make the resources that I have today. And I'm super grateful for it. And I got to the point where I was like, because there's so many options in crypto. There's over 9,000 different types of projects you can get into. I realized that instead of giving people the fish, instead of teaching or giving them which project to go into, I was like, no, I need to teach how to fish. I need to teach them how to navigate these crazy volatile waters. And this is where I'm at today, launching my course literally last week or 10 days ago. It's where I'm at now, trying to get that word out, get a different perspective out for people to see this as a paradigm shifting innovation.
There it is. So similar to most great triumphs, it stemmed from the dark night of the soul, 3-month journey. It sounds like, of everything falling apart. You may not know this. My spiritual awakening came after a year of that. Just like one thing after the next, boom, boom, my finances, my health, my everything, including my car accident and I guess losing my car in that way, and needing surgery and all of these things. And that experience for me was the thing that humbled me to the point of going, I have no idea what I'm doing. I thought I did. I really thought I had this life thing figured out because I'd been successful in high school and college and things seemed to be coming easy, but I don't. And that humility, they say the cracks are where the light gets in, right? That humility opened me up to saying, okay, I'm willing to try something that I previously wasn't. And that was ayahuasca. And that led to.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, really? There you go. After that 3-month period.
Yeah, it was actually within 6 months. So I had it was like 3 to 5 months of like just shit. And then I met my girlfriend after the fact that through the growth process. And within the 6 months of that, we went on a Peru trip in Sacred Valley and did ayahuasca, did San Pedro, and it was life changing for us. And we did combo 4 times with Fabian.
That's one of my least favorites for sure.
It's not fun. No.
That's not one that you do for fun. Well, awesome. That connects us even further, bro. I'm excited that mine was in 2013. That year was 2012, and then January 2013 was my Aya. And I'm stoked to have you on here, man. So like, would you like to make the pitch for why anyone should if I ask you, why should anyone care about cryptocurrency?
Sure.
What's your
pitch? Right. So the quickest way to do like an elevator pitch is what I just bring awareness to the current system. I quickly say, well, the current system, right? You have a centralized banking system. So you have the few that are controlling the many of financially wise, or, in the finances.
This is what's called fiat. Right?
Fiat. Yeah. Fiat. So fiat currency. So everything that is centrally governed by a nation, that's a fiat. So that's the first thing. It's centralized. It's controlled by the few. The other thing, you have a 2 to 3% inflation rate that is compounded on a yearly basis. So that means that every year you're losing 2 to 3% of the weight value of your currency. And every year it compounds on itself. I saw a meme recently that when we shifted away from silver-backed or gold-backed dollar or commodity-backed to just this reserve note, right? It's the piece of paper that we have actually says reserve note on top, which is essentially an IOU. It's them saying like, hey, we don't have this right now, but we have all these other things that equate to this value. But it's essentially just paper. So that's the other thing. You have this 2 to 3% inflation rate. And the third thing is I remind people of the actual system itself. It's not the first time we've done this kind of system. When you look at history, this is like the 8th time in the last, about 1,000 years that we've done this centralized inflationary banking system and it's by design too. That's what's weird, where it starts as backed by something. And then eventually you take away that thing and then you just keep creating it because you've created trust around that object. So this is actually like the 8th time that we're doing it. And every time that it was done before, it only lasted between 90 to 120 years. Okay. The US is at 135 years that we've had this system in place.
So let me ask you here, when you say this system, are you talking about within previous civilizations, like isolated within a civilization? Because What's interesting to me about it now is that it's global. Right. Like it's so globally interconnected that the thing that concerns me is an economic collapse is not isolated to, just the Roman Empire. It is now the entire world that is completely collapsing from that perspective. And I don't know that that's ever been the case in human history. Yeah,
that's and in my research and my belief is that this has been happening, or this was the direction we were always moving towards since the beginning of the banking industry, because it's always gone from it's all around the same families. The same families have kind of yeah, that's one of them. I mean, and that's the thing. Like when you look at history, I just did an interview with Santos Bonacci. I don't know if you know him. He's like 30 years researching history and just like how convoluted the language has been and distorted since like Babylon times. But he says that it's essentially the same families where when in in history, when that specific time requires the destruction of the current system, they just change their names and then they just go on to the next chapter and recreate that system again. And they've been doing that.
Now you're going into the whole Illuminati, reptilian conspiracy, baby stem cells world.
That's right. That's a whole rabbit hole.
It's a rabbit hole. And so let me go back to what you were talking about with, so essentially to recap for people here, our currency was based on gold or silver. And then there was more currency than gold or silver to back it. And so it became what you're saying is a reserve note, which is essentially an IOU because there is no gold or silver that can back it. And the inflation is happening where the value of it is dropping 2 to 3% on what did you say? Annual
compounded.
On annual compounded basis, the value of money is dropping 2 to 3%. What is causing that drop in value?
So a lot of things. Just this last year, we had a higher increase, probably 3-4%, maybe even 5%, because the government decided to print, right, out of nowhere, not backed by anything. It was just like emergency use, almost $3 trillion in 2020 that got pushed into the economy. So that basically dilutes. Right, you create dilution of the circulating supply, which is terrible because then that means that the same items that you've been buying for $5 because there's more currency circulating, that item is going to be bought more. You're going to be buying more of that item. So for the person that's selling the product to not be out of stock all the time, they have to either increase the price, right, or take it away because there's too much currency in the economy to sustain that price. So you have that happens. And so essentially what happens is if you do enough of that, if you keep putting new money into circulation, you get into this, it's like an effect. It starts to create hyperinflation because people start, they want to keep ahead of the new money coming in to be able to make money. That's what happens. You start to get down that road where you just get more and more or less value of the currency that you already have. So, which goes into like, it's actually better to spend your money than to save it. That's the other thing.
Mm-hmm. And so then crypto, they're just printing money. They print it. And by the way, the money they print goes into the hands of the people that run the system or they benefit from it more than anyone else. And that system is harming all of us who are not printing that money or directly receiving that money, because the money that we have in the bank, like you said, is now worth less than we thought it was previously. And so from that, we create a compounding destabilization of our economy. And we have historical evidence that says eventually this all just falls apart. Exactly. And so now we have an alternative economic system. I don't know if that's how you would describe it, an economic currency. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Now we're at cryptocurrency.
Yes. So 2008, right? We had an implosion of the real estate market. I personally bought a house in 2007 for $160,000. And then the following year had to short sell it for $40,000. So I lost 120 grand like that. I believe that was the beginning. That was the banking system realizing, oh, this is it. This is the bubbles needs to be popped. We need to burst it. And I think that was the moment. That was the moment that the bubble burst. And right now we're kind of just like that system is trying to stay alive right now. At the same time, what happened in 2009, Bitcoin came out. Somebody, it was a person, Satoshi Nakamoto, or a group of people. Nobody really knows yet. That person that put that out there hasn't stepped out yet. But that was introduced. People started taking on and realized, oh, this is new. This is different. And it was almost as if somebody was able to create this is how I see it. The systems that we've been born into, that's a bastardized version of the natural way that that type of system should be. Okay. So what does that mean? If you, crypto has basically taken every variable of our current centralized system and flipped it. I mean, you can go down the list, and I've done this, and it's like, whoa, it's exactly the opposite. So you have centralized here, decentralized in crypto. You have centralized governing. That means that there's governing powers that are determining how much of it will be created. Self-governing. That means that the protocol itself determines how much should be pumped out at any given moment. You have transparent, or you have not transparent. You have darkness, right? You don't know what's going on in the books. I remember I saw a video. This was pre 9/11. They brought it up in Congress that there was like $2 trillion that was missing from the Department of Justice, and they're like, "Where did this go?" And then 9/11 happened. I'm not going to say it's a coincidence, but
also the same thing with our military. There's massive amounts of money that go into contracts that
private organizations.
What are the deliverables? What are we actually buying? They're just these massive contracts that can't really be accounted for. And I don't think people are aware of how common this is. Every year there's billions of dollars at least that are just unaccounted for. And that's taxpayer money.
Exactly.
That's tax. Exactly. That is my money that I want going to repaving roads and getting new books and education. That's what I want my money going, not be disappearing. And so, yeah, that was just a little bit of a rant, but yes, continue.
But you just made a very, very good point, which is, again, this is another part of the indoctrination that we've all been born into in this matrix. We've been taught to give our power up, right? To flow our finances to the federal taxes, to the president of the United States. That's the one that leads the country. The people all the way up in the federal level. Those are the ones that need to save me. Literally, that's how we are. At least a majority that I've noticed really are in that mindset. Obviously, if you become aware of this, you can step away from it. But so crypto, I believe, is giving us that power back. It's flipping everything. So crypto is also giving us the power of our finances back. It's giving us power of our decisions back. It's giving us power of our transactions, our data, everything back to us. And that's what I love about it. It's like a physical representation of shifting the flow of power up, back down to sovereignty. And that's true sovereignty, in my opinion. True sovereignty, power doesn't flow up. Power flows down. And what does that mean? It means that the most powerful thing in your life is your body. That is the most sovereign, powerful thing. Nobody can make you do anything, period. Right? We have the choice, period. What happens is that those powers up there, they know this. They know this fact. This is a fact. You can't force anybody to do anything in this reality. So you have to manufacture consent. You have to create consent. And then that's a whole, ideological subversion. That's a whole issue that I believe is going rampant in this world right now.
Yeah, especially with the jab and all of the things that are happening on that level. And I've spoken, and for those of you who are just tuning into this, the very last episode of this podcast was a deep dive musing with just myself, talking about how you're being controlled and what you can do about it. Because the fear tactics shut down the rational thinking mind in order for people to just desperately be seeking the answers, and biologically us being predisposed to look to our role models and alphas of the pack to basically tell us what to do. And so for most people, especially of the older generation, where there was still a lot of trust in the president, like people wanted to be president. It was an esteemed position. That generation is like, okay, what's the president saying to do? Right. And in this fear-based mindset, it's like, okay, the president's saying to do this, that's what I'm going to do. And then you have this kind of next wave of people who literally have almost grown up with no trust in the government whatsoever. I think anyone born in the 2000s, I don't know that I know anyone that really trusts the government in that age bracket.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's funny because like I was born in 87. So I feel like I'm born in that generation that kind of had, the before and after the internet. And
I was 85.
Yeah. So we were part of the same crew here where we were able to experience that life without being so deeply connected and full of stimuli all around us to then experience that. And in my opinion, we're the transition generation. Like we're the ones shifting. We're the one helping this whole paradigm to shift.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's super egocentric because I feel like every generation has some level of self-grandizing. However, I do feel like our generation is the only one that understands both worlds and therefore understands how to bridge them. Without our generation, you have the people who are born into the internet and social media and whatever, and that's all they know. And so there's no way for them to root the values that were present prior to that and a way of being and interacting where it's like, you actually called people on the phone and you did things in person and you had to use your mind to understand directions. I'm amazed at how little I pay attention to directions now. Literally,
Dude, that's so funny you said that because I have that. That's like number one issue when I go driving and I just put the GPS in and why don't you be a man and just know where you're going? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
Well, what's funny is I put it into places that I know I know how to get there, even just in case there's traffic and I just want the update and be able to see the little red lines or whatever. I put it in, or like. I'm here on Maui and we've driven to all these places. I have no idea where the hell I'm going because my brain just doesn't clock it anymore. Whereas before I was like, oh yeah, you're going to pass like 3 palm trees and then you're going to turn left. And when you see the big house, not the one with the red gate, but the one with the white gate, take a right. You know what I mean? Like that kind of mindset. And that's just been turned off, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It begs the question where that computing power is now going, because it is going somewhere. But anyway, I digress. So coming back to the cryptocurrency. So you have this whole list of things that are basically flipped on its head from what our previous economic currency is doing. And now you have cryptocurrency. Does that inherently mean that it's good?
Good question. So yes, no. Let me explain that. Just like a gun is a tool, right? The guy that created the gun, he could have been an evil son of a bitch, whatever. It doesn't matter. I can take a gun, I can take it apart, I can look at the pieces, I can see how it works, I can put a bullet in it, I can put it back, I can put it back together, put a bullet in it, and I can shoot it because I know how that thing functions. I've learned it. I've gone into and dove deep into it. Now, what am I shooting? Am I shooting a target? Am I shooting, am I going hunting because I need food? Or am I trying to kill someone? I think that's a very good analogy because it's based on the user, on what he chooses to do with that tool. Blockchain, which I like to focus on blockchain, that's the fundamental layer, the groundwork that all projects are really based off of. It's based off of this thing called blockchain.
Please explain blockchain.
Sure. Yeah. So blockchain, think of what's the best way to do this? Think of a ledger. So you have a ledger, right? You have when you
record keeping.
Exactly. So it's like a record keeping. If you do transactions, financial transactions in accounting, like you have a ledger that shows all the transactions. And up until now, it's pretty much been a private thing to do. You don't showcase your ledger unless you're a public company. Blockchain, think of it as a few different things. So the first thing, it's a public ledger. That means that anybody can go and look at every single transaction that's ever happened in that ecosystem, in that specific protocol. Let's say Bitcoin. That's the first thing. Second thing is it creates security. That means that when I make a transaction, because there's other people on the network, which let me explain that part real quick. Do you guys remember LimeWire or Napster back in the day?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you could download this software and then tap into somebody else's computer and get the program that way, instead of going to a central server like iTunes or Spotify.
It's peer-to-peer.
Exactly. Peer-to-peer. So in blockchain has utilized that peer-to-peer networking, where you don't have to go to a central server, where everybody doesn't have to go to a central server. We just go to each other's computers. And that's also part of the blockchain. So when I send a transaction, that network, that automated network, is checking everybody else's ledger, because when you become a part of the network, you're downloading the whole ledger into your computer. And it's just like metadata. So it's very light. I think now it's around, for Bitcoin, it's around like 40 gigabytes, which is a lot because it's like very tiny pieces of data. But, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of data. But essentially what happens when I send a transaction, the network is going to check everybody else's ledger. Actually, it does. For Bitcoin, it needs to do, I think, 3 or 4 checks. I mean, it needs to confirmations. And what it's doing is it's going to different ledgers in the area, checking to see the previous transactions of that specific transaction you're doing, because every Bitcoin is trackable, right? You can go back and track those transactions on the chain, and it confirms to make sure that it's real. And this creates a ton of security because it stops from double spending. That's a huge issue we have in the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system, because they're so centralized, every bank that's a part of the SWIFT system have their own centralization. Every large bank, like Bank of America, Wells Fargo. And that's an issue.
SWIFT, for people who aren't familiar, that's where wire transfers internationally. Is that correct?
Everything, every kind of wire you do, domestic or international, goes through the SWIFT system.
Got it.
And that's the system that Visa, MasterCard, they all use to facilitate transactions. Mm-hmm. And so that's a huge problem in the current system, because you can mess with the ledger and then it makes it look like you have more money than you actually do. So then you actually, in the system itself, you're creating more money. That's a whole thing in and of itself. So blockchain stops that completely in its tracks. It obviously, because it's transparent, right? That means it's this public ledger. You can't do that. Anybody can go and check to make sure, that's, the system is already doing this. It'll block someone from trying to double spend. But I mean, anybody can then do an audit and go, what the heck? This doesn't, you can't do this because it doesn't match up with the rest. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge intrinsic value that it has. It solidifies things into this ledger, and then you can't change it. You can only move forward from it.
And so that you have that aspect of security. You also have the transparency.
You have the decentralization, where you're not accessing a central server, as well as you don't have, you can check to see how many wallets have how much money too. That's the other thing. So, a lot of people talk about anonymity in crypto, and that's true and false at the same time. It's very true, because as long as you don't tell people what your public address is or your wallet address is, then you're anonymous. You're good. It's just like an email. I can go and I can create an email and not tell anybody and start emailing people, and nobody will know that that's me. So the same thing with crypto. Until you tell people what that is, you're anonymous. But as soon as you tell people, then it's trackable. Then you can go forward and backwards and track that transactions or whatever it is that you did in that wallet.
So there may come a point in time where, like, the big thing is people trying to figure out wallet identification in order to track what someone's done with millions and millions and millions of dollars for years and years and years. So what's cool, I'm thinking about the part where I wonder if it ever gets to a point of even like legally where something were to happen, it's like, okay, turn over, like we need to know your crypto wallet information, and then they can see all the transfer of funds. That's where my head goes.
Sure. And I think
because like with politicians, right, we just don't know where that money, who's being paid what, and like having that transparency open would be huge.
Yeah, I think, that goes back to intention. If you're using this tool for malevolent reasons, for bad reasons, the truth will find you. The truth will always come out at the end. But yeah, I can see organizations being created, call them forensic blockchain auditing or accounting or whatever. And that could be easily done if you find out the person's, wallet address.
Okay. So if there's this, so if we can think about it basically as the same way as thinking about it as money that people are familiar with, but on this other system with transparency and the ability to track on the ledger throughout the entire history of it, all of those things that you just said, are people making so much money? Like, how is this thing going up? Because that's what people seem to really care about. They see it as a way to make money. And I'm very curious. That aspect makes me nervous because I can understand the perspective of this is the future and this is a better system. So let's invest our money into a better system and start using it. But right now, 90 whatever percent of these coins, I can't use them to buy my groceries. I can't use them to do anything. So putting my money into them is where I just stick my money. And how is it making money, first of all, for people? Yeah,
good question. And that's also that specific reason is why I believe it's going to be so successful, is how that actually works and how that actually happens, which is another opposite of what our current system is, where the value of our currency comes from debt and it comes from war, where the value comes from belief and it comes from community and it comes from, connection, which is a whole different type of energy. So here's how I teach it. We've all been born into this capitalistic world, right? Now, what they've done with capitalism is bastardize it. They've created a toxic environment around creating money, around making money, where you need to lose for me to win. I need to be competitive because that's going to make me go ahead of the person. And we quantify it. Right? We look at numbers. We look at the dollar value of our bank account and see that it's higher than something else. And so we do this thing that creates division, and it creates tension, and it creates hatred, all this negative stuff. What the crypto people have done, and I love being a part of it because the way that people are is exactly what I want for this world, which is community. It's coming together. All a rising tide raises all ships. Like, that's literally part of the space. What they've done is they've taken all of those negative traits, all those negative variables in the toxic capitalism of division and competition and inflation, and hard coded that into the protocols. Okay. And what does that mean? Well, that means that inside these protocols, it's doing its own competition. It's competing with itself. Think of it like that. The protocol that they've built is competing with itself. It's trying to create more value in and of itself. And so we can step into that, letting go of all that bullshit and all those negative ways of thinking. Can you explain a bit how it's doing that? I don't understand. Sure. So what does that mean exactly? Well, first thing, let's talk about Bitcoin, right? Because that's the first one, and that's what everybody knows. So Bitcoin, first of all, has there's scarcity built in. Okay, what does that mean? That means that there's only ever going to be 21 million coins ever to exist, ever. Okay, they're not going to create more of that once it's done. Right now, we have about 18 and a half, a little over 18 and a half million in circulation. 2 million of those, or a little under 2 million, is lost, or the person didn't do a backup of their wallet, they threw it out, it's gone, it's burnt. We can't access that 2 million Bitcoin. So it's really only around 16.5 million. So the rest, which is, if you do the math, what is that? Almost 4 million coins or 3 million coins. The rest is going to take 120 years for the mechanism to mint them or to put them out into the world. Now, why? Why is it going to take 120 years? Well, because of the second part of that mechanism that creates scarcity and creates rarity. And that's the deflationary, that's right. Instead of inflation, we have deflation. What? Right? Name me something else in this world that is deflationary. Everybody wants to create more products to sell, not less. Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think of is like auctions for, artwork,
trading cards.
Yeah. Like rare, like that kind of stuff. But that's not part of capitalism. That's not part of how we do capitalism. It's all about competition and division. So they built the deflation into the protocol. That means that, and with Bitcoin, I'll explain it. Essentially, so the first thing is that every 4 years since Bitcoin started, every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoins that gets pumped out into the network, into the world, gets cut in half. Okay. So what is it? What is getting cut in half? Well, part of the protocol is that every 10 minutes, okay, this is an actual part of the protocol. Every 10 minutes, today it's 6.25 Bitcoins. So every 10 minutes, 6.25 Bitcoins is getting minted out into the world globally. So every 10 minutes, 6.25 is getting evenly distributed to every single miner that's supporting the network and offering up their processing power. Okay.
And then in 4 years, that'd be 3.175, and it keeps.
Yeah, it's actually, we're almost at 3 years. We're at 2.5 years right now. So it's already happened. And actually the price that you're seeing at 50,000 is the adjustment, the adjustment that you're seeing. So it's a cycle. Think of it in cycles.
When's the next cycle? I want to buy it right before.
So we're actually in the beginning of the next cycle. Okay.
Because it just happened.
Well, okay. So think about it like this. So 2 years ago, this was 2018, or at the end of 2018, we had the cut. That's when it happened. I mean, we can look up the date exactly and see exactly when it was, but it was about two years ago or so.
Got it.
So that got cut in half. We were at essentially the top. It was at 20, I think Bitcoin was at 22,000, and it was on its way down when it got cut in half. Okay. So it had already the people that were involved in the network knew this was happening. So they already, as miners, already did what they needed to do to have the price go up. And I can explain that too. There's actually a thing that miners do to help the mechanism push the price up.
Yeah. I actually heard some people that aren't thrilled by that mechanics.
And that's because
it's like manipulation of market, almost insider trading, manipulation of market. I don't remember the conversation fully because I didn't understand it well as here, but I remember people were felt like that aspect was a flaw in the system to some degree.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective, because I can see that as a manipulation. Sure, for sure. But I can also say that when I am talking to someone and I'm aware of something that they're not, and I guide the conversation a certain way because I want it to stay positive, that's manipulation. So, I guess it's a perspective issue. It's when I compare it to the current system, it's not necessarily manipulation in that sense. I would argue and say that it's more of like, they've done the work they've done the work to research and understand it enough to know what to do to help it be the best version of itself.
And so this cycle, so in 2018, we're in 2021 right now. So it happened in 2018, which means that in 2022, like within the next year, it's happening again.
Right. So right now we're in the beginning of the world preparing for the next halvening. We call it the halvening. So
I love that as a wordsmith. I love that. Yeah. It's happening.
The halvening is, there's a whole thing around it.
So when it halves, does the price now go up?
Okay. So when it halves, we're going to be at the price we're supposed to be for that happening, to be able to take on this pressure that the system is going to endure of having less. Because what's going to happen is this, I can tell you right now what's real quick. If the price doesn't reach a certain point, the miners that are supporting the system all of a sudden are going to get their profits, right, what's getting pumped out, cut in half. And that's not good. So if the price is not at a certain point, they have two choices at that point. They can either turn off the machines, because what's going to happen is the electricity that they use, right, to support the machinery and the AC to keep it cool and all that, it costs a lot of money, especially when you get to those data center levels. So you either have to turn off the machines to compensate, or you push the price up. and I can explain again how that mechanism works, but the miners essentially, right now, what they're doing is and you can follow this along. You can actually go to this place called blockchain.info, or there's a few websites, and you can see the amount of mining power that currently exists in the network. And you'll see that it went down for a while, and now it's starting to go back up, which means that they are becoming aware that the price is starting to turn. And so if the price is starting to turn, you want to start accumulating right now in this very moment, because they're going to ride that wave up. And so all the Bitcoins that they're mining right now, they're probably going to hold on to for the next 2 or 3 months to then be able to sell on the way up.
And so is every cryptocurrency its own entire ecosystem? Because this is how Bitcoin's protocols work. And so there's this navigation of, okay, with Bitcoin specifically, like I know that I bought some more when it was down at like 30, 33, because I went, oh, this is dipping. Great. Awesome. A chance for me to put in a few $1,000 more and see what happens. And now it's up to 50 something, right?
Yeah.
And but that, it sounds like now there's a method to that, you can kind of anticipate it. And for people listening to hear, this is not investment advice. This is not, this is not investment advice. Do your own research. This is about educate. The purpose of this podcast is to educate you on even the basic understanding of what cryptocurrency is, because from my belief, it's not like when I put money into it, it wasn't to make money. I actually put money into it because I wanted to support a system that I thought was better than the old one. And now, like I've shared with you at the beginning of this, I don't actually know how much cryptocurrency I have. And it's kind of exciting. And I'm living my life as if I don't have it. And if everything that I do fails and I have to go live at home with my parents, I can just sell all my cryptocurrency and then retire to Bali for 8 years. But
I'll join you.
Yeah.
In this world.
But what I'm curious about is, it seems like the rest of the market moves with Bitcoin. Like that's how I'm perceiving it, at least. And I'm not sure if that's the case or if there's a reason for that.
Yeah, that's a great awareness of that in perspective. So to answer your first question, yes. Yes and no. Most projects are, actually, no, I'll take that back. The minority of projects are their own chain. Actually, I think we're actually shifting into, you have to make your own chain now, or else you're still living in 2017. The other half is built, are tokens. We call them tokens instead of coins. Those are built on top of another chain or an actual existing chain. So Ether or Ethereum, for example, that was I'd say the second evolution of blockchain technology. It's this online computer, and anybody can go in there and create, we call it a DApp, a decentralized application. You can go in there and create your own application on this decentralized computer, and it's represented by a token. So because of 2017, 2018, when Ethereum announced that they were doing this, and then they did the first one called the DAO, we had thousands of new projects pop up and start to, and not that they're, less than, they're just being built on top of that chain. So that's the first question. It's like half and half right now, but essentially the idea is that you want to have your own blockchain. So I forgot the second part of the question.
The market moving with Bitcoin?
Right. So with Bitcoin specifically, this is my opinion. This is just my own perspective of everything that I've experienced. Bitcoin was first, right? Came out. And then you had people just copying Bitcoin, literally a copy and paste. They went to the open source of it. They got the math, they copied it, and then they changed a few things, made it a little better. And then you got all these other coins that came out after that, Litecoin, Doge, right? The little doggy that came out. So all these different, really just about, all they did was carry value. They just had that function to carry value. And my perspective is this: in the beginning, when this started happening, the governments were like, no, this is illegal. You can't do this. And started to try to block it as much as they could. You know, there was that whole thing that happened back in the day with Silk Road. Do you remember Silk Road incident?
Wasn't that where you could like buy a bunch of drugs?
Sure. See, that's funny that you say that. So yes,
I never used it, but that's what I feel like I remember it for.
Yeah, it was this guy named Ross. I actually know his mother. He's actually still in jail for it, but he didn't create it to. I know the whole story, so he didn't actually create it for that reason. He wanted to create a place that people can do whatever they wanted, right? A marketplace to buy and sell anything you want, and to really bring. He was trying to go like, let's bring sovereignty to the internet. Let's allow people to do whatever they want. Obviously, what happened was that tool was being used for bad reasons, for malevolent reasons. So anyway, the point is that when that happened, that was the government trying to make an example, bring fear to the public to keep away from this new technology because it had to do with drugs. And I guess on Silk Road, you could literally do anything. I think you could hire a hitman or something like that. It was really bad, that side of it. So obviously that's what the government tried to do. That's what they try to do with anything that's different and it goes against their own systems. They bring fear to it. Then I realized around 2012, 2013, it was actually the second year that I was in the space that they realized they can't beat it, so they have to join. And I noticed that they were like, all right, we're going to try to regulate this thing. We're going to try to navigate these waters because obviously it's not going away. So I noticed that the legal teams, the people that were creating the documentation to try to regulate this, they didn't think about this or maybe didn't ask for advice, but they, instead of putting crypto, the word crypto, they put Bitcoin. So they kept putting Bitcoin on everything, on all the documents. And essentially, naturally, what happened was that if you wanted to create an exchange, and this was pretty, it was pretty global, the way that this was handled. Everybody just kept putting Bitcoin into their documentation. So if you wanted to create an exchange, you had to be able to get new money in, you had to do it against Bitcoin. You had to get the currency, put it into the exchange and buy Bitcoin. So that created this step, right? This initial step.
And made Bitcoin somewhat necessary for everyone.
Exactly. And it overnight became the gold standard because like, oh crap, we can't buy anything else unless we go through Bitcoin first. That's not the case now. We've gone through tons of hurdles since then. So you have Ethereum, you have a long list of, we call it alternative coins as opposed to Bitcoin, that you can get cash in and buy directly instead of going through Bitcoin. But here we are, for a long time we had that first step. So that brought a ton of volume into Bitcoin itself, making it the gold standard, making it the one that you have to get into first before going into the next. So there's an effect to that. It's what we're noticing now in the markets, that whenever Bitcoin, and this is a whole play, by the way, but whenever Bitcoin fluctuates, it moves every single market that is being traded against it. Now, the people that are in the space are very aware of this, and they're playing this, you can call it a few different things. My friends call it a triangle trade. I call it the triple market trade. But essentially, instead of trading based on the dollar value of the alternative coin that they're trading, they're actually trading against the Bitcoin value. So you have fiat, and then you have Bitcoin, and then you have alternative market. So you have, but that alternative market now is also fiat. There's also a alternative market, fiat market. So people are looking at this dollar value of Bitcoin, of the alternative coin, whatever. They're staring at this and then making trades based on that dollar value. The people in crypto are looking at the Bitcoin alternative market value
ratio, yeah,
and hedging. They're hedging in that market. And so they're accumulating more Bitcoin. That's the concept. It's not about accumulating more dollars. They don't give a crap about the dollar value. They're like, how much more Bitcoin can we get? Because they understand that that's the gold standard.
So essentially buying low on a alternative coin. So I just want to,
so Bitcoin,
if Bitcoin's going up, but an alternative coin is going down at the same time, you're seeing this as, well, this is going to rebound along with the whole market that Bitcoin is moving essentially. And therefore there's an opportunity here to buy this coin at a lower or at when it's worth less Bitcoin, because it's going to rebound, and then I will have more Bitcoin regardless of what the price is.
So the reason why that's such an amazing trade is because even if the Bitcoin dollar value, so like that's what's going to happen, right? The Bitcoin goes up, the Bitcoin dollar value goes up, and then in the alternative market, the Bitcoin price goes down. So let's say you're smart and you got into Bitcoin, and then you're riding that wave up, and then all of a sudden you look at the alternative market, oh, it's all the way down here. So if you take your Bitcoin, then you buy that alternative coin, and now what's going to happen is, even if the Bitcoin dollar value goes down, the compensation, the bounce in the triple market, that compensation, you're getting more of a compounded return than if you were to just stay in Bitcoin.
Got it.
The loss, essentially the loss that you're taking on the dollar value, you're making triple the return in the Bitcoin value. So that's where that makes sense. But you're holding that alternative coin. So that's happening.
And the risk to that is obviously these alternative coins. No one is really sure. Is it true to say that probably very few of them will actually survive in the long term?
Yes. And that's where it's, I go back to all of this are tools. These are all, blockchain is a tool, and there's going to be a lot of projects that aren't going to be able to make it because they didn't create a product, because they created it for the wrong intentions, because they're using it for malevolent reasons, like the central banking system coming in and doing their own project and just perpetuating the same old system digitally. So yes, I would say 90%, if not more, of these projects are going to go in the next, honestly, couple of years, I would say. So it's going to take great discernment and research to find the one that resonates with you. And in my course, I actually go through this. I talk about, don't just jump towards the new shiny thing. Use discernment, use your brain, use your heart, and try to fine tune your intention of coming into the space. And whatever the intention may be, it may be, I want to make money overnight. It may be what you said. I want to support this paradigm shifting technology, or I want to put money away for retirement. Whatever the intention is, the more fine tune you can bring to that, the more clarity you can bring to that, the easier it is going to be for you to choose the right project and go through the variables and everything that makes sense, check off to, for you to associate yourself with.
And would you, because when I said that I had bought in a couple of years ago, basically what had happened is I put in, I don't know, let's say $10,000 or something like that. And then it jumped. I think I bought in when Bitcoin was at $2,000 or something, and I got the big three: Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin at the time. And I bought it.
So you must have some money there. You don't even know it.
And then
pocket.
I have no idea. And so then it got up to 20. This was back in 2018 or something. It went up to 20K, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was checking it every day. And then it dropped from 20 down to 8 or something like that, real quick. And I remember selling a bunch of it and then going, this is taking up way too much of my time. I'm like, it's too much of my time, and this is not what I want to be focused on. It was almost like a social media app. I was on it every day looking at the market, and I just went, this is not where I want to put my time. And so I ended up taking it and putting it on a wallet. But the thing is, I don't remember how much I kept versus how much I sold or versus how much whatever. And so there's a fun factor. People are like, why don't you just go check? And I went, I kind of don't want to. But what you said was, that's really a great way to do it. And, it's also the advice that I got from a friend who you might also know, rest in peace, Malcolm, who said to me, take some money, put it in, take it on a wallet and put it away for 10 years and just don't even think about it. And that was his advice. And so I'm curious, do you advise people, because of how fast things are shifting, do you advise people to go the route of don't invest in things you don't really understand? And, if you're not going to pay attention to the markets and you're not going to invest whatever, or is this something where you feel truly, put some money into it and set it aside? Like, how are you viewing this?
I'd say it's both of those. So I feel like the reason why people say that don't invest into things you don't understand, it's because, I feel like the majority, not everyone, the majority of people in this world are driven by their intellect, and because we're just in a system that rewards intellect, and we don't trust our gut, or actually we're not even connected to the emotions in our bodies, which we justify so much that we just disconnected from the body. So I feel like what happens is people go into this market and fall into the emotional traps. What you just mentioned about being on your phone. I mean, that was me for 7 years, just every night, just looking and not going to sleep. And I mean, it was very destructive to my body, my mind, my spirit. I mean, it got me to where I'm at, obviously, and I'm super grateful for that. But I got to the point where I'm like, ooh, people have to be aware of why they're in there, so that you don't fall to those traps. And one of the big things that I teach in my courses is awareness to your own relationship to money. I've noticed that, and this is just working with a few people and just my own healing journey, is that how we view ourselves in our family dynamic is usually how we treat money. It's not a rule. It's just what I've noticed to be pretty similar. I just like in the process, people are like, oh man, that's how my dad does it. And that's how whatever. I've just noticed that there's similarities there. So that's the first thing, just be aware of your own relationship to money, how you react, because that's going to at least give you the awareness enough to not fall into those traps. And then the second thing I say is, I don't want you to miss out. What I explained about the mechanisms that create deflation as time moves forward, because that's the only constant in this reality, it's time. Mm-hmm. So they built that into the mechanism. As time moves forward, it has to go up in value. So I don't want people to miss out on that opportunity, tapping into that abundance. And so, unless you want to take on entrepreneurship and really step into the space and create in the space, which is very possible, and I actually teach that in my course, you can do this thing where you can create a rule and then set it and forget it. There's a lot of apps out there that give you the opportunity to do recurring buys. So you can do like daily, weekly, monthly buys. And what that is going to do, so you create a rule for yourself. So, all right, I'm going to do $100 a week. Boom. And you just put that into a rule, set it, forget about it. And
it's like my Roth IRA.
Exactly. Actually, yeah. That's a great way to think about it. Because in comparison, what we talked about, a centralized banking system and fiat, that you're losing money keeping the money in the IRA. Not only because the dollar that's constant there is losing value every year, but because these guys are using your money to make money. Why shouldn't you do that? Why has that opportunity, right? The easy opportunity to make money with our money has been taken away from us. And, people can argue, oh, well, we can make 2% or, 1.5% a year in CD accounts. Well, in crypto, you can make the bare minimum right now with like zero risk is 7 to 8%.
And what is that? Where is that for people right now who are listening, who are like, I could maybe push it and get $100 a month in there, people who are really want to build long-term wealth, but are in a financial position that's difficult. And so it would be a stretch for them to know that there's very little risk and they could be getting 7 to 8% return. That's one of those things that in the past you had to be a part of these circles to get that, right? And so where can people do that?
It does take some research. Like I said, I've been mentioning this. I have a course and I go through all of this. I actually have a free course. I have a 90-minute free course that goes through a lot of this information, a lot of free stuff. But in the deep dive paid course, I actually go a little deeper into the passive income options in the space. But it's essentially, it's called DeFi, decentralized finance. And a quick place to go that I can give you right now, you go to coinmarketcap.com, and it's a website that shows you essentially every crypto that exists. And you can click on the crypto. It'll give you the top, the market, the top 10, top 20 based on market cap. And then there's like a section in the middle that gives you the different types of projects based on what they're trying to do. So it'll give you, one option, which gives you all the verticals, like, oh, this one's trying to solve medical transactions or energy crisis, or, and then you can choose based on that. Or you can go to the next one, which is DeFi, decentralized finance. And then it's going to give you a ton of projects to look at and to research. And that everything that you need is in that website. And that's the best way to do it. I mean, research, do the work of learning, absorbing the information. Don't just learn to regurgitate. I think that's a huge shift that the individual needs to do, just because that's what we've been born into in this educational system. Allow yourself to absorb it and ingrain it, and then be able to explain it easily to somebody else. If you can get to that point, then you'll be able to find the confidence to actually do this stuff and take back that responsibility of your financial freedom.
There it is. And the last question I have here as we're wrapping up, the last question I have is, do you believe then for the success of this, like the sustained success where we transition out of the fiat and into a blockchain-based, the economic global currency, for that to happen, there gets to be the use of it. Like, I need to be able to go to Whole Foods and get my groceries with it, or whatever. And that we're seeing some of it, right? Like, I think you can buy a Tesla with it and stuff. So, but in terms of, like, do you agree? Like, that seems to be for me, the piece where until people are going to stores and there's signs that say we accept cryptocurrency as payment, like, it's not going to break into mainstream replacing fiat. Do you agree with that? Because that's, to me, what moves it from an investment opportunity to an actual currency. And how close are we to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're just before that. We're just before, we call it the chasm of mainstream adoption. It's where you go from innovation, creation, to you go to the gas station and you have that option to pay, or you go to the grocery store and you have the option to pay, or, you just start hearing more about it. I've noticed a huge increase in mainstream media talking about it and discussing it and bringing it up over and over. And this consistent bringing it up is good. That's a good thing. The more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, the easier it's going to be adopted. Now, is it possible today? I'll tell you what, the only reason I have a bank account today is for two reasons: to pay my rent and because when I sell my course, to get money into the account. So that's the only reason why I have a bank account. Everything else in my life I do with crypto. And, there's a few steps to take to be able to separate yourself that much, to be able to pay everything with crypto, but it's totally possible. It's very possible. I'll tell you, I have this card that I have a wallet connected to that card. And it's think of like a gift card that gets to be reloadable. And I have a crypto wallet. And then when I need money, I just sell the crypto, and it within a few minutes goes right into the card. And I've done $5,000 transactions on that card. So there's really no limit to what you can spend on it. So that right there in and of itself, it's a Visa debit card. That in and of itself, you got, you have anything that's digital that you can pay with a card.
Got it. So and you just reload it with crypto.
Yeah.
And then your money's in an account that, as opposed to a checking account, or you're getting 0.6% return or whatever it is on something like that, you can get 7 or 8% if you're holding it in a DeFi.
Yeah. And then I in my own portfolio, and I also teach this in my course, but in my own portfolio, I diversify to mitigate the volatility. So I have like the heavier coins, like Bitcoin, the ones that are more top 10 in the lower risk DeFi that are 7 to 8%. And then I have my play money, and that's like maybe 20% of my full portfolio. And then I'll put it into like the higher risk ones, which are, there's some out there that you can get 60%. Yeah, I have one right now, which is very volatile, but it's actually working. It's really pretty consistent. It's 160% APY. So there's some crazy stuff out there, but again, it takes discernment. It takes doing the work to find the right project. Because you can actually, if you don't do if you don't go through all the variables and check all the boxes, you can get into a project that can be, it can make you lose your money. So that's why we're it's kind of like the Wild West right now.
And that's the thing that really, to get across, everyone listening to this, I really want you to understand that this is a future technology. Both Otto and I believe in it. I believe that there will be some form of blockchain currency that is what we are using. It just, even from a technological standpoint, is the future, and makes so much more sense than this money that you can physically lose everywhere, and like all these things. And it is in the very early stages. That means there are a lot of risks. There are a lot of projects that will go under. And so if you are looking at this through like, I would never personally advise anyone. It's not the same as gambling, but it is something where, like, if it's your house, or if it's your livelihood, like, be very, very careful in that. And so, Otto, this has been amazing. So helpful. And I know that the deep divers will get a lot from this. And if they really want to take this the next step with this, your course, it's very clear how much you know about this. And also what I love is the amount of where you've spoken to, your intuition, connecting to the wisdom of the body, just like there's a lot of heart in it as well. And so for people who want to take your course and find out more information, your free one, your paid one, all of it, where can they go?
So my website is otogomes.live. And on my website, you can learn all about me and my journey and how I got to this point, why I know what I know, why crypto is the way it is. And then there's a page there that you can actually buy the course. And then there's another page where you can sign up for the free training. In this course, I really try to, like you said, focus on the mindset. I think that's a huge part that most people aren't willing to step into when they come into this industry, to become aware of that. And then they bring that toxicity and they have a terrible experience in the space. So that's key to having to being successful in the space, just being aware of your own reactions and your own relationship to money. So otogomes.live, or you can go to my Instagram, instagram.com/otogomes, and hit me up there. I'm always open to questions. So come on in.
There it is. Well, thank you so much, Otto. I appreciate it. The deep dive question of why should anyone care about cryptocurrency? I feel like you definitely answered that question. And I'm excited too, like, I feel as if I'm in it I've shared my energetic perspective. It's like, I just want to be in it because I do believe that money is just energy, a representation of energy. And I want to put my energy towards that. And, then the next step for me remains to be seen, but I know there's more here, and we didn't even get into NFTs.
I was about to say, we didn't even talk about NFTs.
We didn't even talk about NFTs or anything. And so you'll have to come back probably when that one and do that. But I just want to say how much I appreciate you, because I do believe that cryptocurrency has already proven to give financial freedom to so many people who previously wouldn't have had it in the old system. And so I do see this as a huge opportunity opportunity, and I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. So thank you for taking the time to come on here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you, man. You're such a bright light and a powerful voice, and you can rap like nobody's business, man. I love it. Just so you guys know, I caught him rapping freestyle at Convergence on video, and I was like shocked. It was amazing. Just want to say that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So fam, deep divers, thank you so much. If you've gotten value from this podcast, please make sure to leave a review. That helps the algorithm. It helps it get found in all of the searches and stuff, and share it out. Share it out. Tag me, Adam.Roa on your shares, tag the deep dive at the deep dive as well. And we will reshare your shares. It's such a cool thing to see this community growing. And I appreciate each and every one of you who are helping spread this information out there, because we are in a time of disinformation and censorship and all of the things. And so these sorts of conversations are what are going to bring the power back to the people, like truly. So thank you for participating in that. And I want to remind you all that always, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Have a blessed day, everybody.
Love it. Thank you, man.